After 8 months serving my country overseas, I came home expecting to hug my 6-year-old daughter. Instead, I found her fighting for her life in the Pediatric ICU, and my husband never even called me. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm a staff sergeant in the United States Army. For the past 8 months, I had been deployed overseas. Every exhausting day ended the same way. I'd take a small photo out of my wallet. It was a picture of my 6-year-old daughter, Ellie. She had bright blue eyes, curly brown hair, and the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Whenever we managed to video call, she'd always ask, "Mommy, when are you coming home?" I'd smile and tell her, "Soon, sweetheart. I promise." That promise carried me through every long shift, every training exercise, and every lonely night away from home. Back home, my husband, Ryan Mercer, constantly reassured me that everything was fine. "Ellie's doing great. She's excited to surprise you at the airport. My mom is helping while you're gone. Don't worry about us. Just focus on your mission." I trusted him completely. Never once did I imagine he was hiding something from me. The day my deployment ended, I couldn't stop smiling. I imagined Ellie running into my arms. I imagined hearing her laugh again. I imagined finally feeling like a mother instead of a voice on a phone screen. But when my plane landed, no one was waiting for me. No husband. No daughter. No welcome home hug. I called Ryan. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I told myself he was probably driving. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello, is this Staff Sergeant Claire Donovan?" "Yes. This is Children's Memorial Hospital." My heart skipped a beat. "We've been trying to reach Ellie's parents since yesterday." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What happened to my daughter?" There was a brief silence. Then the nurse quietly said, "Ma'am, you need to come to the Pediatric ICU immediately." I dropped my duffel bag onto the airport floor and ran. At that moment, I realized my hardest battle wasn't on deployment. It was waiting for me at home. The hospital was less than 20 minutes from the airport. It felt like the longest drive of my life. Every red light seemed to last forever. Every second made my heart beat faster. I kept replaying Ryan's last message in my head. "Everything's perfect. Ellie can't wait to see you." If everything was perfect, why was the hospital calling me? I arrived still wearing my army uniform. Without thinking, I grabbed my duffel bag and ran through the emergency entrance. "I'm looking for my daughter," I said, struggling to breathe. "Her name is Ellie Mercer." The receptionist looked at her computer. Her expression immediately changed. She picked up the phone and quietly said, "Her mother is here." A nurse appeared within seconds. "Please come with me." She didn't smile. She didn't tell me everything would be okay. She simply walked toward the elevators. That silence terrified me. When the elevator doors opened, I saw the sign that made my knees feel weak. Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. The nurse stopped outside room 214. She gently pushed the door open. There she was. My little girl. She looked so small lying in the hospital bed. And 4 was taped to her tiny hand. A heart monitor beeped steadily beside her. There was a bandage across her forehead. Bruises covered one side of her face. For a moment, I couldn't move. I slowly walked to her bedside and held her hand. It was warm. I whispered, "Mommy's here, sweetheart." A few seconds later, Ellie's eyes slowly opened. She looked at me. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "You came home." I kissed her forehead. "I'll never leave you again." Just then, a doctor quietly entered the room. "Mrs. Donovan, may I speak with you outside?" I nodded. The moment we stepped into the hallway, he asked a question that made my heart stop. "Can you explain why your husband refused to authorize the emergency surgery when your daughter first arrived yesterday?" For a moment, I thought I had heard the doctor wrong. I'm sorry." He looked at my medical file, then back at me. "Your daughter needed emergency surgery to stop internal bleeding. My husband refused?" The doctor nodded. "He told us he wanted to wait. He said he didn't want to make a decision until he spoke with his mother." I felt my stomach turn. My daughter was bleeding. And he wanted permission from his mother? The doctor sighed. We explained that delaying treatment could be dangerous. After several discussions, he finally signed the consent forms. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ryan had always acted like a caring father. At least, that's what I thought. The doctor continued. "Fortunately, the surgery was successful. We expect Ellie to recover well." I closed my eyes for a second. Relief washed over me. Then another question hit me. "Where is my husband now?" The doctor hesitated. "I believe he's still in the hospital." I thanked him and walked back into Ellie's room. She was awake now. I gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. She smiled weakly. I'm sorry, Mommy. My heart broke. You have nothing to be sorry about. She looked down at the blanket. I kept asking Daddy to call you. I froze. What do you mean? He said. He didn't want to bother you while you were working. Tears filled my eyes. I had spent 8 months counting the days until I could hold my daughter again. And all this time, the one person I trusted most had kept us apart when she needed me the most. I kissed Ellie's forehead. I promise you something. No matter what happens next, I'm not leaving your side again. Just then, I looked through the small glass window in the ICU door. At the end of the hallway, I saw Ryan. He wasn't alone. He was standing beside his mother. And the two of them were smiling. As if nothing had happened, I couldn't stop staring at them. Ryan was sitting in the hospital cafeteria with his mother. She was smiling. He actually laughed at something she had just said. For a second, I wondered if I was imagining it. Our 6-year-old daughter was lying in the pediatric ICU, and they were drinking coffee like it was an ordinary afternoon. I quietly walked toward their table. Neither of them noticed me until I was standing right in front of them. Ryan looked up. His smile disappeared. Claire. He stood up so quickly that his chair almost fell over. When did you get here? I looked him straight in the eyes. About 20 minutes ago. I've already seen Ellie. Neither Ryan nor his mother said a word. I placed my army duffel bag on the floor. The doctor told me everything. Ryan looked away. It's not what you think. I shook my head. Then explain it. Explain why my daughter needed emergency surgery. Explain why the hospital couldn't reach either parent. And explain why Ellie told me she begged you to call me. But you refused. His mother spoke before he could answer. Claire, you're overreacting. Ellie's stable now. Everything worked out. I slowly turned toward her. Everything worked out? My daughter almost died. And you're telling me everything worked out? Ryan rubbed his face with both hands. I didn't want to worry you while you were deployed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You didn't want to worry me? I'm her mother. I had every right to know. He lowered his voice. I thought I was protecting you. No, irrablia. You were protecting yourself. The table fell silent. Then I asked the question that had been haunting me since I arrived. How did Ellie get hurt? Ryan hesitated. His mother immediately answered. It was just an accident. Before I could respond, a nurse hurried into the cafeteria. She looked directly at me. Mrs. Donovan, your daughter is asking for you. As I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. Ryan looked nervous. Not because I was angry, but because he knew there was something about Ellie's accident that I still didn't know. I hurried back to Ellie's room. The moment she saw me, she reached for my hand. I sat beside her bed and gently squeezed her fingers. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. She gave me a small smile. Then she looked toward the door to make sure no one else was listening. Mommy, can I tell you a secret? I nodded. You can tell me anything. Her voice became so quiet that I had to lean closer. The accident wasn't really an accident. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean, sweetheart? She swallowed hard. Daddy and Grandma were arguing. They didn't know I was on the stairs. I stayed completely still. They were yelling? She nodded. I got scared. I wanted to go to my room. I started walking upstairs. But Grandma told me to hurry because I was in the way. Ellie's eyes filled with tears. I slipped. I fell all the way down. I gently brushed the tears from her cheeks. You didn't do anything wrong. She looked at me with frightened eyes. After I fell, I couldn't move. My chest tightened. What happened then? She hesitated. Daddy kept saying, please wake up, please wake up. But Grandma kept telling him, don't call Claire. She's overseas. You'll only distract her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ellie continued. I kept asking for you. I told Daddy I wanted my mommy. But he said, Mommy's busy working. Tears rolled down my face. For 8 long months, I had trusted Ryan to protect the person I loved most. Instead, my little girl had been begging for me while he chose to keep me in the dark. At that moment, I wasn't just heartbroken. I knew someone in the hospital room was lying, and I was determined to find out exactly why. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Ellie's tiny voice again. Grandma said, don't call Mommy. Those words kept repeating in my head. The next morning, after the doctors finished their rounds, a police officer knocked softly on Ellie's hospital room door. Mrs. Donovan? I stepped into the hallway. He introduced himself as Officer Daniel Ortiz. I'm following up on your daughter's fall. I nodded. I'd like to know exactly what happened. He looked down at his notebook. Yesterday, your husband told us Ellie slipped while playing alone. I stared at him. That's not what my daughter told me. His expression immediately changed. What did she say? I took a deep breath and repeated every word Ellie had told me. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't leave anything out. When I finished, Officer Ortiz quietly closed his notebook. Mrs. Donovan, would your daughter be comfortable speaking with a child specialist later today? If she's feeling well enough, yes. He nodded. Children often remember details adults don't. As he walked away, Ryan appeared at the end of the hallway. He had clearly seen us talking. What was that about? He asked. The police. His face instantly turned pale. The police? I looked him straight in the eyes. They're investigating what happened to Ellie. Ryan forced a nervous smile. It was just an accident, Claire. I've already explained everything. I folded my arms. Good. Then you won't have any problem answering their questions again. For the first time since I'd arrived home, Ryan didn't have an answer. He simply looked toward the exit. And at that moment, I had the unmistakable feeling that he wasn't afraid of losing an argument. He was afraid the truth was finally catching up to him. Ryan left the hospital before lunch. He said he needed to clear his head. I didn't try to stop him. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't care where he was going. My only concern was Ellie. That afternoon, a child psychologist sat with Ellie for nearly an hour. I waited outside the room, my heart pounding. When the session ended, the psychologist asked if we could speak privately. She closed the door behind us. Mrs. Donovan, your daughter has been very consistent with her account. I held my breath. She remembers hearing a loud argument between your husband and his mother. She became frightened and tried to go upstairs. That's when she fell. I nodded slowly. She also said something else. My stomach tightened. What? The psychologist looked at me with compassion. Ellie believes the accident was her fault. I felt tears filling my eyes. No. She keeps saying, if I hadn't walked upstairs, Mommy wouldn't be crying. At that moment, my heart shattered. My little girl wasn't just recovering from surgery. She was carrying guilt that should never have belonged to a 6-year-old. I walked back into her room and sat beside her bed. I gently took her hand. Sweetheart. Look at me. She slowly lifted her eyes. This wasn't your fault. Not even a little. She started crying. I made everyone sad. I hugged her carefully, making sure not to hurt her arm. No, the adults made mistakes. You didn't. She buried her face against my shoulder. I missed you, Mommy. I missed you too. I'll never stop fighting for you. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Officer Ortiz. Mrs. Donovan, we've obtained the home security camera footage. I'd like to meet with you as soon as possible. I stared at the message. If the cameras had recorded what happened, then someone was about to be exposed. And I had a feeling the truth was far worse than anyone had admitted. An hour later, I met Officer Ortiz in a quiet conference room at the hospital. He placed a laptop on the table. The security camera covers the front hallway and the staircase, he explained. It doesn't record audio, but it shows what happened. I took a deep breath. I'm ready. He pressed play. The timestamp showed 3:42 p.m. Ellie walked into the hallway holding her favorite stuffed rabbit. A few seconds later, Ryan and his mother appeared. Even without sound. It was obvious they were arguing. Ryan was pacing back and forth. His mother pointed toward the front door several times. Ellie froze. She looked scared. She slowly backed toward the staircase. Then she started climbing the steps. Halfway up, she turned to look at them one last time. Neither of them looked in her direction. They were completely focused on their argument. Suddenly, Ellie's foot slipped. She tumbled backward, hitting several steps before landing at the bottom. I couldn't breathe. I watched Ryan run toward her. He dropped to his knees beside her. Then something happened that made my stomach turn. Instead of calling 911 immediately, he looked at his mother. The two of them stood there talking. 30 seconds passed. Then another 30. Nearly 2 full minutes went by before Ryan finally reached for his phone. I looked away from the screen. Tears blurred my vision. Officer Ortiz quietly paused the video. The fall appears to have been an accident. I nodded. But, he sighed. The delay in getting emergency medical help is now part of our investigation. I covered my face with my hands. Those 2 minutes felt endless. For a child with a serious head injury, every second mattered. As I stood to leave, Officer Ortiz said one final thing. Mrs. Donovan, there's one more piece of evidence we haven't discussed yet. I turned back. The hospital has a recording of the phone call your husband made before he finally called 911. My heart sank. Whatever Ryan had said during that call, I knew it was about to change everything. The next morning, I drove to the police station. Officer Ortiz was waiting for me in a small interview room. A digital recorder sat on the table. He looked at me before pressing play. Mrs. Donovan, what you're about to hear may be difficult. I nodded. I'm ready. Ryan's voice filled the room. He sounded panicked. My daughter fell down the stairs. There was a pause. Then the dispatcher asked, is she breathing? Yes, but she's unconscious. An ambulance is on the way. Stay with her. Ryan whispered, okay. The call should have ended there. But it didn't. The line stayed connected for a few more seconds. Then another voice could be heard. His mother's. Don't mention we were arguing. Ryan answered quietly, I know. And don't tell Claire. She's coming home tomorrow. We'll deal with this after she gets back. The room went silent. Officer Ortiz stopped the recording. I couldn't speak. It wasn't just that Ryan had delayed calling for help. It wasn't just that he hadn't called me. He had already decided to hide the truth. Before the ambulance had even arrived, Officer Ortiz folded his hands. Mrs. Donovan, based on everything we've collected, we don't believe anyone intended for Ellie to get hurt. I nodded slowly. I know. But we do believe important information was intentionally withheld. I looked down at my wedding ring. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of trust. In less than 48 hours, it had all disappeared. As I walked toward the parking lot, my phone rang. It was the hospital. My heart immediately raced. Is Ellie okay? The nurse smiled softly. She's doing well. Actually, she has something she wants to tell you. A few seconds later, I heard Ellie's tiny voice. Mommy, when can we go home? I closed my eyes. For the first time in days, I finally smiled. Very soon, sweetheart. Very soon. But deep inside, I knew that when we went home, it wouldn't be the same home we had left behind. 3 days later, the doctors gave Ellie the news she had been waiting for. If everything looks good this afternoon, you can go home. She smiled so brightly that it almost made me forget everything we'd been through. Almost. While Ellie finished one last round of tests, I sat in the hospital cafeteria with a folder full of paperwork. Medical reports. Insurance forms. Follow-up appointments. Then my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. Can we please talk? I stared at the message for several seconds before replying. Meet me outside the hospital. 20 minutes later, he was waiting by the parking lot. He looked exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot. I know you hate me, he said quietly. I folded my arms. This isn't about hate. It's about trust. He nodded. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I looked at him without saying a word. I should have called you the second Ellie got hurt. I was scared. My mom kept telling me everything would be fine. I listened to her instead of doing what was right. For the first time, he wasn't making excuses. He was admitting the truth. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and handed me an envelope. I've moved out. I signed a lease across town. I also started counseling. I looked at him, surprised. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve that. But Ellie deserves a father who learns from his mistakes. There was a long silence. Finally, I spoke. You didn't just break my trust, Ryan. You broke Ellie's. He lowered his head. I know. Just then, the hospital doors opened. Ellie came outside holding the nurse's hand. The moment she saw us, she smiled. Mommy. I knelt down and hugged her carefully. Then she looked at Ryan. Daddy. He smiled through tears. I'm so glad you're okay. Ellie hugged him for only a moment before reaching for my hand again. As we walked toward the car, I realized something. Some families survive because nothing bad ever happens. Others survive because they choose to face the truth. I still didn't know what our future looked like. But one thing was certain. From that day forward, every decision I made would begin with one question. What's best for Ellie? Life didn't return to normal overnight. In many ways, it couldn't. A week after Ellie came home, I officially moved into a small rental house a few miles away. It wasn't fancy. The living room was half empty. Most of our furniture hadn't even arrived yet. But when Ellie ran through the front door and smiled, I knew we'd made the right choice. This is our new home, she asked. I smiled. It is. She looked around for a moment before wrapping her arms around me. I like it. That night, after I tucked her into bed, there was a knock at the door. It was Ryan. He wasn't there to argue. He held a small pink backpack in his hands. Ellie forgot this. I thanked him and invited him inside for a minute. The house was quiet. Neither of us knew what to say. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. I met with the detective yesterday. I looked at him. They've closed the investigation. I nodded slowly. I know. They said it was a tragic accident. But they also made it clear that delaying medical care could never happen again. Ryan's eyes filled with regret. I have to live with that for the rest of my life. I didn't answer. Some mistakes don't disappear with an apology. A few moments later, Ellie walked into the living room. Daddy. She hugged him. Ryan knelt down. I brought you something. He handed her the stuffed rabbit she'd been holding the day she fell. The hospital staff had cleaned it and placed it in a small gift bag. Ellie smiled as she hugged it tightly. I thought I lost him. Ryan looked at me. I'll never forgive myself. I quietly replied. Neither will I. But forgiveness isn't the first step. He looked confused. What is? Becoming the father Ellie deserves. He nodded. I'll spend the rest of my life trying. As he walked out the front door, I realized something. Our marriage might never recover. But if Ryan truly changed, maybe Ellie wouldn't have to lose both of her parents. For the first time since coming home from deployment, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. A month passed. Ellie's bruises had almost completely faded. The nightmares hadn't. Some nights, she'd wake up crying and call my name. I'd sit beside her bed until she fell asleep again. One Saturday morning, while we were making pancakes together, she suddenly asked, Mommy, are you going back to the army? I stopped stirring the batter. I smiled gently. Yes, sweetheart. But not far away. I'll be working here for a while. She looked relieved. So you'll come home every night? I nodded. As often as I can. She wrapped her little arms around my waist. I like that. A few days later, I met with my commanding officer. He had followed Ellie's recovery since the day I came home. After listening quietly, he said, Family comes first, Sergeant Donovan. We're approving your request for a stateside assignment. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Thank you, sir. He smiled. You've served this country with honor. Now give your daughter the time she needs. When I got back to the car, I sat there for a few minutes. For years, I believed being a good soldier meant always putting the mission first. Now I understood something different. Sometimes, the most important mission is waiting for you at home. That evening, I surprised Ellie with the news. She jumped into my arms. So you're staying? I laughed. I'm staying. As I held her tightly, I realized something. Coming home from deployment hadn't been the ending I imagined. It had been the beginning of a completely different journey. One where every day wasn't about proving my strength in uniform. It was about being the mother my daughter needed most. 6 months later. Life finally felt peaceful again. Ellie was back in school. Her laughter had returned. The fear in her eyes was slowly disappearing. Every morning before I left for the army base, she'd stand at the front door and salute me. I'd laugh and return the salute before getting into my truck. It became our little tradition. Ryan kept his promise. He attended counseling every week. He completed parenting classes without missing a session. Most importantly, he stopped letting anyone else make decisions for him, especially his mother. One afternoon, he asked if we could meet at a small coffee shop. I have something to tell you, he said. I listened quietly. I've decided to set firm boundaries with my mom. I didn't interrupt. She won't be alone with Ellie anymore. And if she can't respect our decisions as parents, she won't be part of Ellie's daily life. For the first time in months, I believed him. Not because of his words, because of his actions. When I got home that evening, Ellie was sitting at the kitchen table drawing pictures. She held one up proudly. It showed 3 people holding hands. Me, her, and Ryan. No grandma? I asked gently. She shook her head. I only drew the people who make me feel safe. Her innocent answer hit me harder than anything else. Children don't judge people by excuses. They remember how people made them feel. That night, after Ellie went to bed, I stood in the backyard looking up at the stars. Months earlier, I had come home believing my family had been destroyed. Now I understood the truth. Sometimes, the hardest moments don't end your story. They reveal who is willing to fight for it. And for Ellie, I was willing to fight every single day. Nearly a year had passed since the day everything changed. Life looked different now. Quieter. healthier, more honest. Ellie was doing well in school again. She had started playing soccer and couldn't wait to tell me about every practice after I picked her up. One Friday afternoon, her teacher called. "Mrs. Donovan, we'd love for you to attend our Family Appreciation Day next week." I smiled. Of course. The following Friday, I arrived at Ellie's classroom wearing my army uniform. The children were excited to meet a real soldier. Ellie stood proudly beside me. "My mommy helps people," she told her classmates. "And she's the bravest person I know." I felt my eyes fill with tears. Not because of the compliment, but because a year earlier, I wasn't sure she would ever smile like this again. After the presentation, parents gathered outside the classroom. Ryan walked over, carrying a small bouquet of flowers. He handed them to Ellie. "They're for the strongest little girl I know." Ellie smiled and hugged him. Then she looked at both of us. "Can we take a picture together?" Ryan glanced at me. I nodded. For Ellie's sake. Her teacher took the photo. It wasn't a picture of a perfect family. It was a picture of two parents who had learned that loving their daughter mattered more than holding on to pride. As we walked toward the parking lot, Ellie slipped her tiny hands into ours. She looked up and smiled. "This is my favorite day." I squeezed her hand gently. "Mine too." Driving home that evening, I thought about the woman who had stepped off that airplane almost a year ago. She had arrived expecting a joyful reunion. Instead, she found heartbreak, fear, and betrayal. But she also discovered something else. Real strength isn't measured by medals or military rank. It's measured by the choices you make when the people you love need you the most. And from that day forward, that became the mission I was most proud to serve. 2 years later. Ellie was 8 years old. Healthy, happy, and somehow even more talkative than before. One Saturday morning, she walked into the kitchen wearing a toy camouflage jacket and gave me the most serious salute I'd ever seen. "Good morning, Sergeant Mom." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. "Good morning, Private Ellie." She giggled and climbed onto a chair beside me. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to help people like you do." I smiled. "You don't have to wear a uniform to help people. There are 100 different ways to make the world better." She thought about that for a moment. "Then I'll find my own way." Those words stayed with me all day. A week later, our local community honored first responders, veterans, and active duty service members at a small ceremony in the town park. I attended in uniform, not because I wanted recognition, but because Ellie wanted to see me there. As the ceremony ended, she took my hand and looked up at me. "I'm proud of you, Mommy." I knelt down beside her. "You know what? I'm even prouder of you." She looked confused. "Why?" "Because after everything you've been through, you chose kindness instead of fear. You chose love instead of anger. And that's what real courage looks like." She wrapped her arms around my neck. "I love you. I love you more." As we walked toward the parking lot, I looked back at the life we had rebuilt. It wasn't perfect. Some scars never completely disappear. But scars don't always remind us of what we lost. Sometimes, they remind us of what we survived. Looking back now, I don't remember the medals I earned or the missions I completed as clearly as I remember one promise I made beside a hospital bed. "I'll never leave your side again." That promise changed my life. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm proud to serve my country. But the greatest honor I've ever had will always be being Ellie's mom.